Hi everybody, this is Francine. I'm back again with another live video to talk to you about the embossing folders. Just going to see if I can get it to come up on my iPad so that I can see comments more easily. Not sure if I'm going to have any luck with that, but we'll see what happens. I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. Okay, switch the comments on. Right, so in the newest Close to My Heart book, on page 46, there are 4 different embossing folders. So we have this Quilt embossing folder, which is $14.50, and we have these 3 Wilderness embossing folders. So the Constellations that has the Big Dipper in it, the Woodland embossing folder with the trees, and this Mountain Peaks embossing folder with the mountains. You can buy these individually for $11, or you can buy the whole set for $26.50 of these 3. Now, these embossing folders are not the size that we normally have, so I'll just show you what they look like. So first of all, the Quilt embossing folder is here. You can see it's about the size of my hand. It actually fits a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of paper, which is the size of our card bases. So you can just slot it in like that, run it through the machine, and you end up with something like this. Apologise for the shadows. It's very dark in here today, so I had to put the light on, and now I get shadows in my video. Okay, so what I did was just did a little piece, and I'll just show you how I inked this up. So I basically took a post-it note. Just realised I put my scissors away. And just cut it in half. If you have a regular size post-it note, you don't need to do that. So put this here. So basically what I'm doing is masking off the area around where I want to ink. So then if I take one of my inks and sponge, not a stamp, and then start on the paper here and then just rub it into the area that I've embossed, you get this beautiful effect. Hi, Anne. So you get that. And of course you can do different colors. So using that technique, I ended up with a couple of different cards that I made. This one was using sage, wisteria, and lilac for the colors. And I've just stamped a sentiment onto a stitched oval and put a mat around that. And you ended up with a lovely card with just a few loose silver sequins to add some bling, which is always fun. This is another sample, same kind of idea, but different colors. So on this one I used fern, sapphire, and tangerine. And this is from the new Melissa Esplin Sentiments stamp set. And these are some of the loose crafty sequins that I think are still available. So that's some ideas for some samples. Of course, you could just leave this blank and put it on a page, put a tag maybe over the top of it, something like that. The other thing I wanted to show you about the folder is that when you open it up, there's actually it's hard to show you, there's actually a hole here. And this is the case with all of our larger folders. So what I did was actually embossed a full 12-inch strip. So how I did that was I started off by putting the paper in here and running it through the the machine, and then I just moved that up and matched up the stitched lines there to the stitched lines that were up here, ran it through again, and then I had to do it a third time just to do that last little piece there. Now, something that I'll just point out, if you actually put this through your machine the normal way with your plate, like other sandwich, if you put the plate on top and then run it through, you'll end up with a little bit of a depressed area here where the rollers actually compress what you've just embossed. So what I did was I actually just lined this up with the edge, and then I had the other plate underneath, you know, up to the normal spot. And then when I ran it through, because there's no pressure here, you don't get that extra edge. So that's an idea for something if you want to make a nice long strip like this. And you could use that on a page about sewing, for example. And I'll just show you another example here. So I've done another one on green paper, and I actually just cut this piece out. You could perhaps lay that on there, and then with this stamp set, you could use that on your page about your quilting or your sewing, or do it on the card. You know, maybe use this "Life is so good" or something like that. So those are just some different examples to use with the quilting folder. So I think that's one of my favorites. I initially wasn't going to get this one, but then I decided it looked really good. Okay, so the other folders then are these Constellations and Woodland, etc. So just get it out of the plastic. This is the Constellations one. Not sure if you can see, but that's the Big Dipper, and those stars are solid in comparison to the other stars. They kind of have a hole in the middle of it. So when I ran that through on this one, I actually used our embossing pens and just coloured in the top of them, sprinkled some silver embossing powder over the top, and then heat set it, and you end up with something like that. It was a bit messy on this one. I could probably do better. This is the back, so the debossed side, and I've just run our white pigment ink across the top, and I think that looks a little bit like the Aurora. You kind of get that bit of effect. On this one, I did it again, and I just used an emery board, and I sanded just the stars from that Big Dipper constellation so that that stands out in comparison to all the rest of the embossed area. And lastly, this is just a card that I made with this. I ran the ink pad over the top to sort of highlight the stars a little bit, and that's a little card that I made. And I used this stamp and thin cut set, the Aurora scrapbooking set, because it's a real wilderness one and goes really well with this set. So that's where that comes from, and the trees, etc. So that's that folder. Then the Mountain Peaks folder, if you can see that, has just got mountains. So there we go, just embossed in white. And what I find you can do is use our watercolor pencils and color in some of the mountains. So this was on almond cardstock, I think, and I used actually a white pencil with some shimmer brush, I'm not sure if you can see that, in where the snow-capped mountains would be, and then just used some green to colour the top of the mountains in a bit. And I used that same idea on this card, only I embossed it on green to begin with and then coloured it in with another green. These are all, again, stamps from that Aurora scrapbooking set. So that's some ideas for the mountain one. And the last one in that set, again that you can get either individually or as a set, is this Woodland one that has these trees in it. So when you emboss it, not sure if you can see that there, that's the trees just on their own. But it reminded me a little bit of growing up in Canada and snow on the trees. So I actually sanded this embossed area so that I ended up with sort of white on the tips that I thought kind of looked like snow. And I added some of our clear shimmer brush to that. Again, I'm not sure if this shows up on the film, on the video. Of course, it always shows up better in real life. And I made this card using the Aurora paper for the top. And this is a zip strip from that paper as well. So I like that card. I thought that turned out nice. And here's another one that I used. And I sanded the card back, the embossing area back, and then just trimmed it, fussy cut it with my scissors. And I just thought this might be a cool base. I've just used the same color cardstock, but instead of using the dark side, I've turned it over to the light side, and I ripped a bit of that so that it looks a little bit like mountain peaks perhaps behind that row of trees. So that would be nice if you did it as a whole long piece on the bottom of your layout, or even just as a little extra bit somewhere on your layout for some extra design. So that's all I've got to show you today. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you like it. If you're interested in these embossing folders, please be sure to talk to your consultant or write it on your wish list for later, and hope to see something that you guys have made with it in the future. Bye for now.